What alien kaiju is a bigger threat than Space Godzilla? No, that's not a trick question. That is a legitimate question people are having after the released early screeners of Godzilla and Kong Supernova. And to put it simply, there is none. There is not a single space kaiju that exists within Toho that could rival that of Space Godzilla, aside from Void Ghidorah, but we all know damn well that is not happening in the Monsterverse. But knowing the Monsterverse and Legendary, they'll probably bullshit their way through it, like they did with Space Godzilla and Supernova. Don't argue with me, they did. But currently, from what I'm seeing, a lot of people are under the impression that Kaiser Ghidorah is a bigger threat than that of Space Godzilla. And I'm here to tell you, hell no. Absolutely not. Kaiser Ghidorah has never been considered a bigger threat than that of Space Godzilla. And I'm fully aware a lot of you will be typing or saying, well, Legendary is different from Toho. They can make their own things and they can do what they want. Who do you think they're getting their stuff from? Toho. Toho will only allow Legendary to use their monsters as long as Toho gets a giant payout and it makes sense for the character, which doesn't really make sense for Supernova, knowing that Space Godzilla doesn't make sense at all. Why do you think the new Empire had Legendary monsters the entire time? Because they didn't have the rights to anything else. They had to pay out a huge amount of money to Toho in order to use Toho-made monsters in their film. And the one with Space Godzilla is going to be a giant payout. Realistically, the only other threat that is bigger than Space Godzilla is Destroya. That is it. There is no other being or other kaiju in the Godzilla franchise that could stand a chance. Except for maybe Magita in the comics, but we also know that's not happening either. Truly, I fear for the Monsterverse. Bringing in Space Godzilla this early was probably their last nail in the coffin in terms of how the Monsterverse is going to play out. The screenings themselves already sound absolutely horrendous, and I don't know what's going to change in a year and a half to justify the means. Some will say it's Gigan, that's another one. Again, Gigan is not as strong or as powerful, not even near as powerful as Space Godzilla. So everyone saying it's any other space kaiju aside from Space Godzilla does not make any sense. You could maybe argue Orga, maybe. But even then, not really. Again, the Monsterverse will probably get it, bullshit their way through it, and make it stronger than Space Godzilla, which a lot of people will not be happy with, me included. Because then you're kind of just putting Space Godzilla in a lesser light, saying, you're just another character that Godzilla and Kong and the rest of them can take on. Knowing that Space Godzilla is supposed to be that guy, right below that of Destroya. Like, that's the whole point. All in all, there is no kaiju or space kaiju, aside from Destroya, that stands a chance, live action-wise, against that of Space Godzilla.